So good evening all. Welcome to the Monday, December 20th, 2021. Regular meeting of the Town of Easton Planning and Zoning Board.
There we go. Sorry, Bob
okay.
just joined us.
In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards a quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAP. To use Zoom, follow the link in the agenda, which is available through the calendar on the front page of the town's website. Board members and commissioners will be on video and audio. Public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion, the meeting members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function found on Zoom, or use the Q&A function. If you're joining only by phone, you can press *9. Board members, please use your name when creating a motion or a second to expedite matters for our record keepers. So with that, why don't we get started? So gentlemen, I need a continuance to January 10th, first for 20 South Street, Old Forge Commons, special permit.
Motion to continue 20 South Street, Old Forge Commons to January 10th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, Strange, aye.
Anderson, aye.
Aye.
I recuse myself on this one.
Okay, so that's 4-0. So, and folks, you know, I just realized I didn't call us in. I didn't have us chime in to ensure we have a quorum. So if we just back up for a second, Strange present.
Peter DeShane present.
Anderson,
That's in present.
Kevin present.
All right, thank you. Forgive me, board members and members of the public. Kind of a chaotic day, but I'll get this one. All right. So we need the same thing. We need a continuance to January 10th, 58 Mill Street, Owl Ridge Estates, both definitive subdivision and special permit estate law.
motion to continue 58 Mill Street, subdivision and estate lot to January 10th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Strange, aye.
DeShane, aye.
Anderson, aye.
That's an aye.
I didn't hear Amos, but did David hear Amos?
Kevin, aye.
All right, great. I'm sorry, my buffering seems to be rampant tonight. Okay, next up we have the continued public hearing, preliminary subdivision plan 31 Paquanticut Ave. Stephanie?
Yeah, hold on. No, I'm promoting Aaron Waluka. And if Aaron could indicate if, I know Walter Mirioni is signed in, but he may be here for another project. So we should see Aaron in just a minute.
Yeah, I see him. He's at the bottom of the panelist list. He just needs to unmute himself. There he is.
Good evening, all.
Good evening. So if you just want to name and address for the record, and then feel free to updates.
Aaron Waluka, 31 Rear, Paquanticut Ave, Northeastern Mass. I believe Walter is here for this hearing as well.
Okay, so I will promote him as well.
And hopefully Scott from Holmgren as well.
I did not see Scott's name.
I see Walter. I don't see Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, if someone from Holmgren's office is here and could raise their hand, we'll promote them. But I don't see anyone raising their hand. There is a Conservation Commission meeting tonight, so I don't know if maybe they have something before the Conservation Commission is out.
Scott is supposed to be here. I talked to him this afternoon.
I don't see him.
Well,
I'm just shooting him a text.
I did the same. Oops.
I always dread to have dead air on the nights of a very full agenda.
Yeah,
During the holiday season.
Scott has been trying to get in. He's having difficulty getting in for some reason.
So do you guys want to start, or is it imperative that, do you want us to start something else and circle back?
I believe so.
we can have, I mean, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not, you know, I'm not aware of whether you're expecting something from us. But if we're not expected to be delivering something, then we'd be happy to have the dialogue. I think if you were expecting something to be presented from us, then Scott would have that.
Stephanie, what's your thought? I mean, it's been a while since. we
No,
discussed
they
this one.
submitted the revised plan.
Right. Yeah, so I just assumed you wanted to present the revised plan, since as I can recall, that hasn't been presented, but not imperative. Or do you want us to move on to the next item and wait for Scott to get through? Or?
Yeah, that probably makes sense, because I don't have a plan.
Just
So
think-
I'm not in a position to present anything.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you could make sure that he's using the link that was in the agenda that's posted to the town webpage, the town calendar, because we did have to, because of the last meeting where we had the problem with the link, which was the same link we were using over and over again, we deleted that because we just didn't want to take the chance
That's
of
probably
having
the
a
problem.
problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here he is.
Oh, never mind, we got him.
There we go.
He was probably smart enough to go on the agenda.
He'll be with us in a second.
I see him.
How come everybody sees them before I do?
Yeah, so he's right at the bottom. There he is.
Scott, time to get some new memory for your Apple II.
God, I hate technology, guys. Sorry about the delay. There is nothing more stressful than the 5 minutes between logging in and seeing people waving back at me. It's very stressful for an old guy.
Scotty, they're looking for you to present the updated plan, which I
All right,
didn't have, so I wasn't able to start.
Sure. I think really the biggest change we've made to the plan is just agreeing that we would eliminate driveway for Aaron's house off of Guinevere and just eliminate entirely from our plan and just keep his existing driveway out to Pequannock. So really, that was the only significant change we made. We had I think a deed reference that we wanted to freshen up, but besides that, that was the biggest issue, Mr. Chairman and board members, was just eliminating that driveway. There was some concern from the neighbors about a possible cut through from Guinevere down Aaron's driveway and out to Pequannock. So eliminating that, I think, took care of that concern, or at least we hope it did.
And I'm assuming everyone can see the plan on my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the driveway that Scott was just referencing came off the cul-de-sac here and went over to the Waluka home here. And that was the driveway that was eliminated. And they did provide updated deed information confirming ownership of the properties.
And I know there had been discussion of a deed restriction and possibly another method to ensure no future development. You want to touch on that, Stephanie? I think you didn't. So.
Yes, I talked with town council. The board had mentioned two methods of ensuring that the lots weren't further subdivided into the future. One was through a deed restriction, and one was through the decision and having a condition that there would be no further lot additions to the subdivision. And town council was comfortable with both. If you just do the deed restriction, it has a 30-year lifespan. But if you do, you have a condition on your decision that lasts in perpetuity. So the suggestion was to do both. We've seen it both ways, where you have a deed restriction. And I'm assuming that restriction would be on both Lot B and Lot A, that there would be no further subdivision. And then you'd restrict the subdivision itself to have the number of lots at this point in time. And I'm sorry, I don't have counted how many lots were already permitted for Guinevere Road, but you just add that one additional to the total number.
Questions, comments, board members, applicants? Anybody? Are all on the same page?
You have some questions, Greg?
Oh yeah, I see two just popped up. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you.
I will let Kevin.
Yeah, I see Kevin Cunningham and Ann.
Oh, I didn't hear allowed to talk.
Hi, sorry about that. I had to rejoin. Kevin Cunningham, 62 King Arthur.
Welcome.
Thank you. My notes just on the other page. So I was, wanted to know, what is the board's definition of a paper cul-de-sac, and how often and why would we approve it in this instance? So that's sort of three questions.
Well, since you addressed the board, there was no, best that I can recall, there's no definition of a paper cul-de-sac. But to your point, I can think of two for sure that have been done in my tenure on the board over the last 16 years. There may be more, just all I can recall at this point. And I think the times that they've been allowed, the board, again, being a voting member on the board, I think I could represent that it felt that it best met the goals of the town's bylaws. In that, the town, there's been a history in the last 20 years, given Easton's large land area, but land area that is encumbered and sometimes with zoning issues or old pre-existing lot layouts or environmental factors, to try to help homeowners and citizens be able to develop a piece of land, but at the same time maintaining Easton's rural character, which means a whole lot of things, but and many times means eliminating as much new construction of roads as possible. So that's so instead of going with a large cul-de-sac here, why do that? Leave sort of the existing houses the way they address the house, where they address their existing street, and then allow a lower impact method to in this case reach one structure. And I think that's pretty consistent with the reasons boards have voted for this in the past. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you've covered it, and it's in your point. It's there's not a definition of a paper road. There isn't really a paper road. What the board is doing is granting the waivers for the reasons that Mr. Strange just mentioned and articulated.
Okay, so just to follow up, so granting a waiver is changing the laws, the current laws on frontage, or is it a waiver? I'm just trying to understand this I'm sorry.
It's waiving road construction details, so paving a road that is XY, that has, that has granite curbing. It's waiving, in this case, it's basically waiving the construction of a road according to the town's bylaws and rules and regulations.
So it's changing the bylaws to.
No, it doesn't,
No, it's waiving the road in lieu of a driveway, I think is probably the simplest way to put it.
And this is now going to be town property, this cul-de-sac? Like I could go park my car on it if I wanted to? This paper cul-de-sac?
well, it's not. Greg, do you want me to
I'm
respond?
trying, go ahead, I'm trying to think of an answer to the parking.
So, yeah, I know
I'm
that.
not a lawyer, so.
Interesting question. So, no, it will not be, the town will not accept this as a road because it won't be constructed. So it will be a private way and it won't be developed. So the only place you would be parking would be on someone's driveway coming off of the existing cul-de-sac.
Okay, well, I live in the backyard there and looking at it from a Easton resident, I see this as changing the current atmosphere, environment of Easton and not keeping with the current layout of the neighborhood, and I strongly oppose it. Very much so. And I'm not hearing any justification. This is, I don't know, the third or fourth time we've come to this board, and you guys are wonderful. I actually enjoy it very much. It's wonderful to hear and listen to all the work and research you guys do. But I'm not hearing that this is keeping with the neighborhood at all. So thank you very much for my time. I really appreciate it.
Stephanie, I want to address that, as a citizen, so you can understand, I'm really proud of the work that this board has done all these years. Because we really do put a lot of thought into it. We're all citizens of the town, and and I understand, it's so hard. I live about a mile from this site, and I'm surrounded with lots of trees and open space. Some of it has power lines on it. Some of it's just land that hasn't been developed yet. Some of it's land that will never be developed. But if one doesn't, what I learned years ago, we can't control the land that we don't own, and doesn't mean we have to agree with what goes on with it, and doesn't mean that we can't participate in trying to shape what can happen there. But I look at this piece, and keep in mind, there's been no vote. This is just preliminary subdivision plan. If this board may choose to vote and say, no, we don't approve this preliminary subdivision, or we think you're on the right track, go ahead and do a full filing. But that vote hasn't taken place yet. But one of the factors that I, as a member of this board, would look at is, can this piece of land be developed within the bylaws of the town? And it could, by extending Guinevere Road. Now, that doesn't mean that the people that live at the end of Guinevere Road are going to like it. I understand that. We all wish we could control what, or at least I wish I could control, a 1 mile radius around my house, but it's the scourge of my life. But so here I look at it as a planning board member. I look at it more as, okay, they have a right, within the rules and regs, if it's approved, to extend this subdivision. And I could see where that could successfully be done. So I look and say, well, okay, I would rather minimize the impact by limiting it to one house, try to maintain the rural character as much as possible, not letting it go all the way through to Pequannock, which I know is just 2 driveways, but things can happen, right? And by reducing, the less pavement, less drainage structures there, then the more green, the more trees, the more natural that can remain, or the more opportunity for green landscaping for a future homeowner. So I don't look at it so much as changing. It's not changing the bylaws. It's tweaking the requirements to access the lot from a construction standpoint. That's how I would do it. So sorry to get long-winded.
No,
Okay.
I understand, and I appreciate all of that. But I do, at the face of it, or if you look at the details, we are changing this. This request has been made several times over the past X amount of years, 10, 20 years. So why today or this week are we thinking that this should now be approved after not being approved in the past? Again, I don't want to take over the whole meeting. I'm sorry to continue to talk. I'm sure there's others who have questions. But in my head, I'm still not convinced. So, and again, Greg, I really appreciate it, your time.
No, I understand, and I really appreciate, you know, Mr. Cunningham, your participating in your feedback, and we take it all to heart, so, we do. And I totally understand what you're saying. But yeah, I'll move on, since I have a bad habit of being long-winded sometimes. Just ask Attorney Marioni. And Grant, I think I saw her up there.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
I can everybody?
Okay, great, yes. So I'm afraid that the change to the proposal doesn't actually address my concerns because the applicant owns both of these lots. And last time when the board met, I asked the question, how do you enforce keeping the applicant from just using that driveway to the other lot, you know, just driving right over there and exiting that way instead, and essentially still having a pass through on his own property since he owns both? It doesn't solve that problem for me at all. And there are two rights of way to Pequannock from his property right now. So I understand and I respect the goal being to make land buildable where it can be made buildable. But to me, this isn't the only way that it can be done. And what it does is it gives this individual an opportunity to use that as a pass-through that he shouldn't be given. And I haven't heard yet how it would be enforced to prevent him from doing that at all. I worry that it's based entirely on trust. And my concern with relying on trust here and saying, okay, this individual is never just going to just throw down some gravel and drive across. My concern with the trust is that when he initially proposed this, he said, the reason that I need these driveways, is because my house can't be accessed easily. It can't be found for package delivery, and it can't be found by safety personnel. And those two rationales didn't really hold water because they could both be easily fixed through alternate means. And so now that driveway is deleted from the plan. So the rationale that was given originally is not really what this is about. And I'm not sure that while I'm asking this board not to allow him to get the variances or the waivers that essentially give him access, even if the plan suggests the driveway would only go to a different lot.
Okay, Stephanie, I've been talking an awful lot. Do you want to take that one?
Well, my assumption is that Mr. Aluka is going to be selling the second lot that's to be developed, and that will be a new owner, who I would think would take, I don't know that there is anything to prevent him other than that I believe he'd have to clear some land to get to that driveway.
There's nothing.
But there would be,
There actually is.
And he's never done it.
is there a stone wall?
There's a stone wall and there's a curb there. And he has taken the stone wall down in the past in order to remove stuff from his property, is my understanding from other neighbors who lived here before me. Without, I don't think, getting permission from the town to do that, which is the kind of thing that makes me really question whether assuming that he's going to sell that other lot is good enough, when at the end of the day, what's really happening is allowing an access point for Guinevere to land that he can access. And he could choose never to sell that lot, or he could choose to sell it, but the board has no control over that. But at the end of the day, he has the power to drive across his own land out through Guinevere, which poses all the risks that many of us have raised previously, especially with an individual I think runs a business that involves a lot of materials that most of us don't want to see going up and down Guinevere, that has, all these children and the bus stops and all the stuff at the end. I think the fact that the board can't prevent that is a huge problem.
Okay, sure. I just want to jump. Oh,
Greg, can I speak to that if you don't mind?
sure.
So the board can prevent it. It's a condition in the decision. It's very simple. And to then violate that decision subjects the applicant to zoning enforcement. That's number one. Number two, the clear intent of this is to sell the lot. And it obviously would create a problem with the neighbor who has the ability to enforce, because that road will be private. It will be privately owned by whether it's an association or some other form of co-ownership. He will be violating that co-ownership, those rights. And the third, and maybe even the most significant way it gets prevented is during the approval of the definitive subdivision, there is some sort of requirement that is placed on the plan, that is a construction detail of trees, of a stone wall, of something that, again, if the applicant goes and destroys, he's in violation, just like any condition in any permit. Those are the multitude of ways of dealing with this problem. This is no different than any other issue. Mr. Waluka, there's no question, wanted access through to this point at the beginning. He made that very clear. He did think it was better for his property. Hearing all of the concerns, he agreed to give up that access as a compromise to move forward. It was one of the compromises he was willing to make. He's not hiding from the fact that initially he wanted that access, but it became clear that neighbors and maybe even board members did not want that access, so he agreed to give it up.
Well, my follow-up question to that is when you're talking about.
So, I'm sorry, Miss
Sorry.
Grant, if you could just hang on a second.
Sure.
Because when I threw it originally, Stephen, I thought we'd had a discussion, maybe, that when Mr. Aluka decided to amend his application and eliminated the driveway, and there had been talk of a deed restriction. I had just assumed, I thought there had been a conversation that yeah, it was going to be part of any decision if and when a definitive subdivision is approved, that some of the, one of the variables that Mr. Marioni spoke of, they would say that it's not allowed to access. It's not only did we pull it off of paper, we weren't going to allow it to be accessed. And sure, maybe that we haven't had that discussion of landscaping yet, but maybe do landscaping. And then also, it's important to note that in our subdivision rules and regulations, in our session, I mean the planning and zoning board, off of a street driveways, two driveways, whether it's two from the same lot or from different lots, are not allowed to be any closer than 30 feet to each other. So physically, I'm pretty sure it's impossible for there to be two. Now, that doesn't mean someone can't access it, to Mr. Marioni's point, but there aren't, any zoning can be violated by any property owner, but there are enforcement mechanisms in place, part of the law in the town's charter. So,
If I could ask just as a follow-up, does the enforcement mechanism mean that me as the neighbor, if I'm next door and I notice that the trees never got planted or the wall never got built and the land doesn't get sold, and Mr. Aluka does in fact use it as a pass-through, is it then my responsibility to contact and try to get this enforced somehow? And then are we talking about like a lengthy, difficult process that involves fining him or something like that? I mean, it's one thing to say there's enforcement, but my guess is that the reality is enforcement is lengthy and difficult. And the reason I raise that is because this doesn't appear to be the only way that Mr. Valuka could make this land buildable. It may cost him something to get the right of way, that one of the two rights of way that accesses Pequannock to be part of the land, the other lot. But he does already have two rights of way. So I'm just suggesting that if we know in reality this enforcement mechanism is something difficult and requires involvement of neighbors to get going, that maybe it should be considered that really isn't a necessary burden to put on us when there may be alternatives.
well, first of all, any details that this board decides to have included, for example, I think Stephanie brought the example of trees, or maybe Walter brought the example of trees and a stone wall or something. Those would be required to be in, depending on the decision, prior to issue of a building permit, or maybe prior to issue of an occupancy permit. There would be a mechanism put in place to ensure that what was promised through through the instrument of the plans was done. In terms of, any of us that live in Easton, if an abutter uses property in a way that we feel violates bylaw, it's up to us. It's up to us to report it. And we see them, often.
Yep.
It's a legal process, but it is enforced. But I don't.
Well, the reason I raise it is because it's not hypothetical in this case. I assume that, I don't know, it may be that Mr. Raluca has permission to have the items on his property that he has that's zoned residential. I don't know for sure. And I don't know if he got the permission that was probably required in order to remove things from his property. So I'm just pointing out that this is not a hypothetical concern for those of us who live here. But I totally understand your points. I do appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions.
Okay, thank you. Board members, I've been gabbing away. Any follow-ups or comments on what we've discussed so far? Okay. So I see, Howard has a hand raised. So Howard, if you could identify yourself, name and address, please, for the record.
This is his wife, Christine. I'm at 23 King Arthur Road.
Okay, and Christine, I'm just sorry, just your full name, please.
Margulies, Christine
Okay.
Margulies.
Thank you very much.
There is a precedent for this already, having occurred in this development. It was many, many years ago when the apartments were built up on 106. The request was made for a pass-through at the back of them. Through a lengthy investigation or whatever, what it ultimately came down to was there was no way to enforce that would not become a pass-through on through the development to avoid five corners. And the Planning and Zoning Board at that point in time took the position that, in fact, there was no way to enforce that because people were involved. So my concern is if you make the cut-through is there. If a road is there, whether it's private or not, and it's an access to avoid going out onto 106 and down to five corners to get back up to Bay Road, then we have children at risk. This is a large development with a lot of children. There are 3 buses that stop here in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. Many of the children walk. That's my concern. And again, this was turned down by the Planning and Zoning Board back then. What they did was make a path through to allow a fire truck to get through if they had to, because it could break down the chain on the 2 poles and get into the development without having to go through 5 corners.
Okay. Thank you. Board members or applicant, anybody comments or response to any of the comments we've heard so far?
Strange, if I could add one more comment.
Go right ahead.
Just to be clear about one issue. This project, not in its current iteration, but adding of a second lot here, was approved by this board in the past. It was done, I believe, through an estate lot, and there was an appeal, and the process played out, and then the permit expired on its face. It has a certain period of time that you have to take action under the permit, or it expires, and that occurred. So just to correct or clarify a little bit of the background, there was a second lot approved here. It was not through the definitive process. I believe it was through an estate lot special permit. But the result was the same, whereas you wouldn't have a large disturbance area to create that cul-de-sac. So just to clarify that one point, because I wasn't aware of it until maybe a year or so ago, and I suspect that many of the board members, if not all, were not aware of it either. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Okay, so, okay, I see. And Grant, I'll let you have one more comment, then we have a really full agenda, so we're gonna move this along. If that is in fact she wants another comment. I just see a hand raised. I don't know if it came down.
I may not have lowered her hand, but.
Hi, thanks. Yes, I just want to make one quick response to that last comment, which is that I did send the board that plan that Mr. Marone, pardon me if I'm mispronouncing that, just referenced from the past. The general result may have been similar, but the facts and the context differed in that the applicant did not own the lots at the time. He didn't own the end piece of parcel that was in his land. So he would not have had any incentive to use it as a pass-through. And it also was slightly different in that the lot ended, the new lot he was creating ended above one of the rights of way. But anyway, I would just ask the board to review that original plan so that you can see how in fact it does differ, particularly where the individual did not own the land at the time he submitted it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so at this point, I think we've had sufficient public comment. And so at this point, board, this is a preliminary application. So I think we would entertain, and Stephanie, you certainly can back me up, or help me out, but I would think we could either vote to not recommend they move forward, or vote that recommend that they move forward. That doesn't tie, that assuming that what comes back to us if we were to vote in the affirmative, what would come back to us is a plan reflecting, the current plan and some of the details that we've talked about, specifically, ESA, access, deed restrictions, etc.
Right, so the vote would be to either approve or disapprove the preliminary subdivision for the purposes that Greg just said, so that the applicant could move forward with that plan as a definitive subdivision.
Maybe just to be clear right now, if nothing were done, the applicant actually has a right to go on that public way from his land whenever he wants, right?
Right.
Correct. Yeah, that's good. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So
And
we're really voting about either the waivers, and then maybe any deed restrictions, which I almost feel worse about actually. But so I might just not going to make a motion, but I probably won't vote to move this forward just based on those two facts. So
I'm missing on what two facts? I'm sorry, I didn't. You'll ask me.
Just that the applicant could. I think people should be able to access their land if it's right there, unless there's a reason for a deed restriction. Maybe there is in this case. And then just also for the multiple waivers of the, I'm just not going to just keep on going with the kind of waiving.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Every case, so that's what I'm doing.
Well, so why don't we, if someone wouldn't mind, I would like someone to make a motion. So, because I would like to discuss this, but we can't without a motion. And if the board doesn't want to vote for it, we don't have to, but I would like to follow up on Peter's point, but I think we need a motion to discuss.
And I think this is a hearing. Is this a hearing, Suzanne? And I think we need to close the hearing before.
It's a preliminary subdivision. Right, Walter?
Yeah, I mean, we've never closed before.
That's for a special permit, I think.
Or a public hearing.
It's just a public meeting, not a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, so folks, so we can do three things, I guess. We can make a motion to approve, which someone, if it was a second, then we could have discussion, or we can make a motion to not approve. There could be discussion, or there could be no motion. I would hope after the time we've spent on this, there would be at least some type of motion, so we could have a discussion, have a vote, and decide on a direction.
I'll make a motion to approve Stetson.
Is there a second?
Melissa, you're on mute, yeah.
Amas, did you second?
Yeah.
Okay,
No
so
second.
so we can discuss. So I'll just respond to Peter's, and I totally understand what he's saying. I guess you're kind of doing from both sides. One, you were saying you thought he should have the right to access, but at the same time you didn't like waiving everything. And I just look at the waiving. We've done this before, and I know you haven't always agreed with it, and that's fine. I'm not trying to sway you either way. But I just, on what I said earlier, there is a way that this could be developed as a one lot subdivision with the construction, the extension of the existing road. And that just seems to be an awful lot of, goes against a lot of what we've talked about in the bylaw. So that's why in the past I have supported the 2 or 3 that we've had like this, because I thought, okay, it was in the spirit of the bylaw, but it had, you know, a reduced negative impact on the environment, which a couple of keystones to our charge in town. Any other thoughts or comments?
Stephanie, what is the, can you point out the exact waiver that,
We've lost you, Amos. But I think what you are asking are what are the waivers that they're requesting?
yes, what are the waivers exactly and what are they?
Okay, hold on a moment. They're listed in, I believe Suzanne included my report in the binder, so hold on a minute.
I'm looking for them too.
No, it doesn't,
It's fair to say that basically
they're waiving the construction of the road.
we're in the construction of the
All
road,
the
right?
steep
In lieu of a driveway.
road.
They're on the top left corner of the plan if you want to zoom into it.
Yeah, that's right.
And keep in mind, you know, I think it's important to remember, if we were to approve the preliminary tonight, that doesn't give any rights. That just lets them move on to a definitive, where if there's waivers that concern folks or if there's other issues, they can be discussed. And it does not, you know, it does not obligate this board to vote in the affirmative for a definitive subdivision. It just moves it to the next step.
Yeah.
Did we find the waivers?
Yeah.
Did you see them all?
Yep, I have.
Oh, she's got it.
So again, you have your waiver from the road construction standards, the tree plantings, there are already trees on the property. And again, you don't have to waive that, you could continue that. The fire alarm box, which is no longer required from the fire department. Request from water, that would be the looping. The environmental impact study, you know, you're just adding 1 lot. Then from a traffic study projection and report, from computations used in designing stormwater design, it's simply adding a lot. You can still look at the drainage patterns from the driveway when it comes as a definitive subdivision to make sure there's no interruption. Groundwater study, they will still need to comply with Title V for the new sewer septic system construction. Planting strips are for the roadway. Hydrological study, utility easements, which this again will be just serving the private utility, the private homes and open space requirements. So again, they're pretty much the standards required for road construction and the impacts of that road construction.
Yeah, but some of them might be applying to this development, even without the road, so.
And they would need to request those with the definitive subdivision.
Right, so that's the time in which you discuss this, including maybe something that will satisfy the blocking the access from Waterview to Buchanan.
Correct.
That's the time to do it, when we approve the definite.
Yes, tonight we're just if we approve, it's just approving for them to move on to a definitive plan where they would have to do a full filing. And what, you know, waivers would be addressed at that point. And not that we can't discuss them now, but anything would, any other requirements would come up during the definitive. This is just an optional step in our bylaw to allow an applicant to come in. We've worked flexibly on lots of parcels and land, given our existing inventory and the characteristics out there. And this is why this process exists.
But also the definite plan needs to contemplate some of the things that have been said on this.
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah. Absolutely, I didn't mean to imply that they wouldn't. No, I'm just saying that's the time, that's when it would happen. Tonight, we're not really getting into tonight, we're just saying, yes, go ahead, you're just saying, yes, you can go ahead and file for a definitive subdivision along the guidelines of what we talked about. But again, it doesn't obligate us to vote it in and does not remove the period to add in, requirements along with what you're talking. Anyway.
That's need to be clear to them that those waivers are in the air at this point.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, Strange, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Anderson, aye.
Clear
Peter, did you chime in? I didn't hear you.
Yes.
You guys, all right, so all right, you guys vote. Okay, I guess I'm having audio issues. All right, well, thank you. Thank you one and all, and
Thank you, everybody.
I guess we'll see you back
Thank you, everyone.
during the definitive. All right,
Happy holidays and have a good evening.
thanks, you too. Excuse me. Okay, so I know I apologize. That went a little longer than I thought, and this is, and I want to apologize. I know some of the folks presenting tonight were sort of fell victim to our technology a couple weeks back when we had to cancel our meeting. So we'll try to go as efficiently and quickly as we can, but we need to give everybody their due time. So next up, we continue public hearing, 555 Foundry Street, special permit duplex. I believe I saw Rick linking in the green room. Good evening. Good evening. If you could identify yourself, name and address for the record, please.
Hey, Rick Lincoln, Lakeville, Massachusetts, in Bridgewater, Mass, where the business is. So thanks for hearing me tonight, and a few of you, thanks for coming out the other day to kick the tires out there.
Sure. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So do you want to give a little, we had a site, just so folks in the audience know, we had a site visit, not a public hearing. There was only questions asked, nothing was deliberated or discussed. But we kind of given a little tour of the grounds and of the structure along with some members of the Easton Historical Commission, as they also have a say in the approval process per the recently passed First Village Residential District bylaw. So, Rick, do you want to walk us through quickly, or how do you want to proceed?
Sure.
Okay.
Stephanie or Suzanne, you want to put can somebody put the site plan up, maybe?
You should see it now.
Yes. Yeah, maybe down a little bit further. So as we discussed last time, there's an existing house built at least a couple hundred years ago. And obviously in the historic district, so that's where much of the discussion has focused. And there are no plans to modify the exterior of the house, with the exception of a front portico, which I think the consensus is was not on the house when originally constructed. So the plan there is to remove the portico, upgrade all the windows, and then a little deck on the rear. Those are kind of minor changes. The other change, which I think was the reason we continued to this hearing, was that garage, which is a red line in the rear. So the proposal is to tear down, there was like an existing, I'll call it a shed right there. They call it a wood garage, could have been a one-car garage a long time ago, and replace that with two garages and I guess the charge to me at the last meeting was trying to get some elevations that would be consistent with the historic nature of that area and kind of complement the house. So there were 3 or 4 iterations of the garage by my architect, and this is the one we kind of landed on. So that's the proposal, and garage 1 would serve the first floor of the condominium, and then the second floor would be serviced by garage 2. So we're hoping to, or I'm hoping that the garage gets approved, and then obviously I'm going for a 2-family, which, and the existing is a single family. And that's about it. There are no other changes proposed to the exterior of the house, and nor the site.
Greg, you're muted. There you go.
Forgive me. Stephanie, do you have any, anything you'd like to add or?
No, nothing to add.
And so I guess before, just first of all, so I think, as I mentioned, you know, so the Historical Commission has a 35-day period to review this, and I know there's going to be a meeting in early January, and I know some of the, I know as Mr. Lincoln discussed at the meeting that he was thinking of doing, replacing the windows with maybe simulated divided light windows on the front of the house. Going back, removing some of the modern 2.5 colonial casing on the windows, going back to more period specific, and yeah, removing the portico complete with built-in orange AZAC seat or bench. I guess that's more of a bench. And those items will get reviewed a little more detail by Historical Commission, and then he's adding the garage. So this is our first time through with the bylaws. Would we look to vote on this tonight, or do we probably need to hear back from Historical? Or
I think you need to hear back from Historical first.
Yeah, I think out of, you know, just, yeah, good. So I agree. So anyways, I just wanted to lay the tracks that way. And so board members, any questions or comments from Mr. Lincoln?
I think this is great, and I think that's why we have the duplex special permit. So, and like, you know, the applicant's been working with the town on this, so it's good. Thank you.
I think it aligns with the new rezoning and the objective we have for this area as well. So, it's a good project.
Chris or Bob, either of you guys, any thoughts?
Yeah, I concur with those thoughts.
Same, sorry I couldn't make it on site for the tour.
Well, that always happens every time it's your turn to buy the coffee. We've noticed that. But, so, all right. So yeah, I'll go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say at the on-site, Tim Hurley, who is the chair of the Historical Commission, agreed to get that meeting scheduled as quickly as possible so as not to hold this up.
Sure, and yeah, I think I heard talk of first half of January. And just so folks at home know what we're talking about, when we there's a overlaying historic district in this section of town, but which really has no protection. It's more of an honorary title. So the bylaw allows an opportunity to increase density to help revitalize this area, you know, for restoring, preserving homes. So Mr. Lincoln, you know, this is this house is one of the Belcher estates, the 2 brothers that ran the Foundry right across the street, and so he's looking to sort of update and revitalize the outside along historic lines, and is adding a dwelling unit. So it's a lot of what this board has discussed, you know, at town meetings tied into various master plans. So that's why we all seem so positive about it. So anyways, it's nice to have someone working with the new bylaw. We welcome you, Mr. Lincoln. So I guess at this point we should just continue to our next meeting, and then if we have to bump it out one more time, just depending on when historical gets gets, their info back. It sounds like everybody's on board with what you've presented tonight. So, anybody want to make a motion to continue this to January 10th?
Motion to continue to January 10th.
Kevin, second.
Yep, January 10th. Want to make sure I had that right. Okay, all those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Kevin, aye.
That's an aye.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lincoln.
Okay, one quick one. Yeah, thanks, everybody. So I don't need to do anything, Stephanie, to apply or anything like that? They're just gonna schedule the hearing at the store?
Right, your application, the special permit application triggers that communication to the board and soliciting their comments.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks. Okay, next up, we have Wayne Beitler, excuse me.
And Wayne, I'm covering for Wayne tonight on this one.
Okay,
This is just a quick update for the board. I think, again, you all have received a notification earlier, a few weeks ago, that the housing production plan is being updated. This is a 5-year update requirement. It goes to the state for approval. And it really helps the town and the Affordable Housing Trust set their action plan for the next 5 years for housing production. It is in process. We are expecting to get public feedback on the draft mid-January. And the Planning and Zoning Board will need to adopt the final plan, the final draft, as will the Select Board. So that's being, the timeframe for that will be around mid-February. And we really just want to let everybody know that there will be a public input session that has yet to be scheduled, but you will be notified when that is scheduled, and please participate in that if you can.
okay, great. Anybody have any questions for Stephanie? No, all right, well, thank you, Stephanie. We look forward to that. And I have way too many screens open. I'm trying to get back to the agenda, forgive me. Next up is, what I missed it.
It is the,
I know it's the wastewater treatment plants, right? I mean, I'm sorry, the water. I don't know where the agenda went.
We have 218 Center Street, site plan review number 21-257. PEAS water treatment plant.
Like a pro.
and I think I have just promoted everybody associated with that project.
Yep, I think we're all here. My name is Adam Cran with Environmental Partners. I'm a project manager for this PFAS treatment project. Along with me from Environmental Partners is Maria, and then also Greg Swan from the DPW is there. I'm not sure if Greg, you wanted to say anything, or he's kind of outright. He's got another commitment right now. He's trying to juggle both. So if he's not able to come on, I think Maria's got a short presentation. We'll just go through outlining the project and then answer any questions.
Great.
Maria, do you want to take it away? Maria, you're, we can't hear you.
Anybody? I couldn't hear her.
There you go.
Try it again.
Yeah?
Might need to,
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Do you mind if I share my screen?
No, go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so can you see this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. So yes, this is the PFAS treatment project at wells 1, 2, and 4R. So the project is at the 3 well stations, and this is to address elevated levels of PFAS found in the public water supply. And treatment will be through granular applications, which will be housed in treatment buildings, 1 for each well station. And then we have associated piping and utilities to go along with treatment buildings. So well station 1 is located off of Gary Lane, and then wells 2 and 4R are located off of Washington Street. We won't talk much about the treatment process. It's more about the exterior utilities and pipeline. So we also went through permitting with Conservation Commission because the sites are located within several critical areas, including wetlands, wetland resource areas, the wellhead protection zone for the public water supply, and so at well 1, site access will be off of Gary Lane. Gary Lane is a dead end off of Center Street, and there is an existing well station here to the northeast. We are proposing a treatment building to the south of that existing access driveway, and then we also will have a backwash drying bed to deal with the treatment waste. And then between the existing well station and the treatment building, there will be underground electrical and water mains going back between the 2 buildings. And then we'll also have some site utilities extending out to the drying bed. And here we need a new propane tank for the HVAC unit in the proposed treatment building, and we have a tight tank to take floor drain waste from the building. This is a rendering of the proposed treatment building. It is approximately 20 feet wide by 40 feet long and then 37 feet high. We are proposing a shed roof on this. So the overall height is approximately 37 feet to the peak of the shed roof. Because we'll be adding impervious area, we need to improve the stormwater management system on site. So the shed roof will drain into a gutter system with the roof leaders directed to 2 sediment pour bays behind the treatment building. And then those sediment pour bays will overflow onto a vegetated filter strip and a stone infiltration trench. And this meets all of the Massachusetts stormwater management guidelines for peak flows and treatment. In addition, there's some areas on this site that are currently just bare, sandy, gravelly areas. So those areas will be reestablished with loam and seed. At wells 2 and 4R, they share an access road off of Washington Street. So under existing conditions, we have a existing well station. This is well station 2, page right, and then page left, we have existing well station 4R. We're proposing the well 2 Pfos treatment building near where those access driveways split. And then the well 4 treatment building close to well 4. Again, there will be electrical and water mains going back and forth between the well stations and the treatment buildings. And then these two treatment buildings will share a backwash drying bed. And then similarly, we have, here we have natural gas mains on site. So there's no need for any propane tanks. But we will still have the tight tanks for floor drain waste. And at well 2, there's no emergency generator. So we'll be adding one of those so that the town can maintain water supply during a power outage. Again, these two buildings will have a similar aesthetic to the well 1 building. It's going to be just a pretty simple rectangular building with a shed roof, same dimensions and overall height. At well 2, again, we need to deal with stormwater. So here, those roof leaders will be directed to a vegetated filter strip. And then that filter strip will direct the stormwater to a bioretention planting area. And at well 4, the roof leaders will discharge into a gravel area behind the treatment building, directed to a grass channel, and then ultimately ending up in another bioretention planting area. The grass channel will have check dams to reduce velocities in the channel to prevent scour. Okay, so construction. We expect construction to begin this summer, and it should be approximately 12 months from the time that the contractor gets on site to the time that these treatment buildings are up and running. We expect there to be heavy civil earthwork for about 6 months of that time, and the rest will be work inside the buildings and startup of the treatment units. The contractor will be required to meet Tier 4 emission standards, and they'll be directed to not idle their vehicles while working. Typical work hours will be from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we will have a site safety supervisor on site at all times representing the town and overseeing construction. Post-construction, the site security will largely stay the same. Those existing access roads have swing gates to limit vehicle access to town-approved vehicles. The backwash drying beds will be closed in with fences and a swing and a gate. The treatment buildings will have intrusion alarms that are connected in to the water department's SCADA system, so that they can see who's coming and going from the site. And the town staff will make site visits daily during their normal rounds at those well stations. For exterior lighting, we're proposing a single light over the double doors to the treatment buildings, and those must be dark sky compliant. For noise attenuation, the standby generator proposed at well 2 will have a sound enclosure, and it'll only be operated during a power failure or during routine weekly testing. Each of the treatment buildings will have an HVAC condenser that will be used to dehumidify the building, since the filter vessels will sweat, and so the condenser will reduce the sweating, and that's its size similar to a residential unit. So there should be minimal noise from that. The actual treatment operations for PFOS removal, these are just large pressure filters. There's no pumps associated with them, so there should be no normal operating sounds. And then in terms of filter media replacement, the media only needs to be replaced every 2 to 4 years. And that'll be completed by a vendor that does this work normally. And the media will be trucked onto the site and then back off the site. Floor drain waste will be captured in the 2,000-gallon tight tanks. And those tight tanks will have high-level alarms to notify the operators that they need to call to get the tight tanks pumped. That'll be by a third party again. And so things that are directed to those tight tanks include any hose water from the operators washing down the inside of the treatment building, which should not be a frequent event. Condensation from the filters and piping, and that's about it. The treatment buildings won't house any chemicals, so there's no cause for concern for contamination. And then the backwash waste will be directed from the filters into these hydrodynamic separators that will capture a lot of the fine materials that's in the backwash wastewater. And then the wastewater is then directed to a drying bed for infiltration. There shouldn't be many solids, but any remaining solids will be collected in the drying bed and periodically removed by excavation offsite for disposal. And we expect that that maintenance would have to occur every 5 years or more. That's all I have. If you guys have any questions, I can hand it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So Stephanie, do you have anything you want to add before I open to the board? Is there any question? Oh, did you guys hear me?
We did.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Oh, Stephanie, we can't hear.
Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
I did hear you, I did respond. Maria has answered all the questions I have outlined in my report.
Okay, great. Board members, questions or comments?
I have a question. Is there any risk of having certain hazardous materials being on this site that can represent a risk to health? I know that it says that every 5 years someone come and take things off and everything else, but still apparently those are materials that you don't want to have around. What are the measures and for safety and what that means?
I can try to answer that. So the basic principle is that it's like a filter that just sometimes gets clogged up with tiny little bits of stuff over time. And so you just occasionally have to just flush out like maybe little bits of iron or whatever that builds up. And so that's the sort of stuff that will be backwashed into the drying bed ultimately. And we have that pre-treatment hydrodynamic separator in place to kind of help minimize whatever might get to that infiltration basin. But keeping in mind that this is water that's in the ground, it's being pumped up, and then basically the first stage of treatment is this filter, and anything that's caught by this filter that's particulate might be backwashed. So it's basically coming from the ground and going back into the same ground it came from.
Are you capturing Teflon on this one or not?
So Teflon is a perfluorinated compound, and the goal of treatment here is to treat the specific Pfos compounds, the perfluorinated compounds that are regulated by Mass DEP currently. And so while Teflon itself may or may not be captured, there are specific compounds that are regulated by Mass DEP that is the focus of this treatment.
But when you capture in the filter, they will be at higher concentration than it is in the water, right? You will have all this.
Yep. So
that's the one that you are.
Yeah. So I guess getting into the details of this, since you're asking about it, it's a good question. Is the PFAS itself actually basically sticks to the filter media that we have, and it's the only reason why we would be backwashing is incidental other stuff that builds up on the filter. And as Maria referenced, every so often the filter kind of gets exhausted, and and it becomes time to change out the media. And that's what you take it out of the filter, bring it off site, and bring in new media and refill the filter and restart.
So it's minimal risk because these people that dispose of all that do it safely and that's what they do. They take it to a safe place, right?
That's their job.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Is the treatment process very like in your orders that would be noticeable to someone walking, say, like in the trails?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Does the treatment process create any odors that would be noticeable to someone walking, say, like a half mile away? So it's so minimal that there's not even any like odor measurements necessary.
I don't think so. I mean, it's drinking water, and activated carbon is actually known to remove taste and odor compounds from water. So
okay, yeah,
I would be really surprised if there are odors.
Yeah, well, I guess if you ever rented a cottage without a sulfur filter up in Maine, then you might notice that water does smell sometimes. Yeah. Okay, and then I guess the Washington Street project. So is that like the pool on the front side on the Washington Street side?
Sorry, the pool?
Sorry. Are there two structures on the Washington Street, or do you have one of the pools like we had off Norton Ave?
Let me bring up the
Yeah, sure.
and we can figure out what you're asking.
Peter, are you referencing the drying beds, the lagoon? Lagoons,
Yeah.
the Red Mill project.
The lagoon, lagoon, not pool. So that's a pool there would be the eastern side, closer to Washington Street. Is that correct?
1 second. Okay, can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the drying bed.
Okay, the drying bed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The lagoon, not drying bed is okay.
Yeah, it's somewhat interchangeable.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so here's the property line, but Washington Street is actually, I think, like 1,000 feet page south.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the structure is towards the back at the other well site.
So this is the well 2 treatment building, and then over here is the well 4 treatment building, and this is the existing well 4.
Yes, yeah. So the lagoon in the front, that will be that's presently like trees right now, right?
Right. So this is our limited clearing, and we maintain a little under 50 feet.
Okay, so you're actually going to clear that whole, like within that whole radius?
We need to clear
No, maybe not.
within
Yeah. No,
this
so
area.
yeah, no, just that little, just that small area, right? Yeah, okay, I see.
Right.
What's connecting the two?
So this is our, we have a pipe coming from the well 4 treatment building, down to the drying bed.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I just had one quick question. As part of this project, is there like a goal of reduction we're trying to accomplish? By like a percentage or like a parts per million? I know Easton has Pfos. We all got the thing in the mail, so I was just curious. Goal of this.
Yeah, so the treatment goal is to be less than 10 parts per trillion versus the regulation, which is 20. In all likelihood, it will be lower than that on a typical basis.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but the idea will assume that is to comply, that's the reason we are doing it.
Yes.
Well, I think the reason is to get rid of PFAS.
Yeah.
Or to reduce it anyways. I for one support that effort.
Yeah, I have a question. The DPW or the town is responsible for maintenance of these locations?
Yes, they are, and they currently maintain the well stations at these locations.
Any further questions?
Motion to approve the site plans for 218R Center Street and 95R and 100R Washington Street.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, and let me just check. For the record, I see no hands raised or chat started on Zoom. All those in favor of the two site plans being approved, Strange eye.
And right.
Anderson,
Did we get everybody? There was kind of a scramble there.
Kevin, aye.
Yeah, a little slow there tonight. All right, well, thank you all. We appreciate you taking time during the holiday season to come in and see us. I'm sorry it took a couple meetings, but we can blame it on COVID, I guess.
I appreciate that.
Thanks. Happy holidays, all.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
very much.
everybody. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so next up, we have two internally illuminated signs. The first one is 20 Roach Brothers Way, Unit 200 for University Orthopedics.
All right, let me get to those. Just a second.
It's channel letters. I like it.
Hold on.
They listen to us.
He's a giant. There we
Nice.
I think we made it 130 inches to scale.
go. Okay. So the top one would exist. This is the proposed.
Yeah, it's channel letters.
Yep.
Meets all the bylaw requirements, right?
Yeah.
Questions, comments, anybody?
Motion to approve 20 Roach Brothers Way.
And second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor, Strange eye.
Kevin, aye.
That's an aye.
Anderson, aye.
Okay, definitely it's faster too.
All right,
Let's see.
next up,
I can't really make that any smaller without it.
15 Roach Brothers Way.
Again, you can see this is the existing down here in the right-hand corner, and this is what they're proposing.
So they just kind of rebranding here?
Yes, yep. Mhm. And you can see they show you what it will look like in the evening.
We have to start breaking our bones. These guys can just like make new signs just because. I've helped.
Motion to approve 15 Roach Brothers Way.
Kevin,
That's second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor, oh, Strange eye.
Shane, right?
Anderson,
That's an
aye.
aye.
Kevin,
All right, that's unanimous. Okay, next up, we have Goodspeed Estates, architectural review for lot 3, number 17-02.
Ethan Ekstrom on for that.
Oh, we're good to go?
Yep, the Ethan's,
All right.
yep.
Let's see. So, Mr. Ekstrom, do you have anything you want to present?
Yes, please. I'm just going to pull up these plans.
And just identify yourself, name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Ethan Ekstrom, representing the development team. The project is 12 Goodsby Lane, Lot 3, and my office address is 85 Main Street, Easton. I'm ready to share my screen if I may.
Sure.
Everybody see that plan? Andrew?
Yep.
Okay, so in the last meeting, we got some feedback that the building height proposed was about 3 feet too high based on the setbacks. And so we have reduced the building height by changing the design of the main gable a little bit. And so the overall goal is to bring down the scale of the building to fit a little bit better. And I'll just go down to the height here. We have calculated the mean roof height to be 25 feet from the existing grade plane. And before, I believe we were about 28 feet. So that's about it. All that I ask is that the board hopefully proceeds with an approval for the design.
Okay. So, the couple of, I think you're over by an inch on your building height, but at least on the plan I saw, but I mean, that's obviously easily fixable. But I thought when we were all together last, we talked about the setback is what's in the district, not 0, even though that was erroneously written on the plans. It was 25 feet. And forgive me, I'm trying to find your, but I think you had 21 feet to the house. Was I wrong on that, Stephanie or Ethan? Or, I don't know if you guys had a discussion. Why can't I find this?
We did not have a discussion, but I think you're correct. I think it's 21.
So I think, and I know at the last meeting, Mr. Engstrom brought up in the middle of it that he thought there was 1 or 2 or something up in Weber Estates that were less than 25 feet. As you guys know, I had to recuse myself as I did the building designs there. It had nothing to do with the sites. I'd never seen it. So I went and I saw there were a couple that were less than 25. But I still say the same thing I said that night. And feel free, anybody here can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've discussed this with the planning department. And I think we're all on the same page that this is the underlying district here is residential. The front setback's 25 feet. In the residential district, the rear is 20, sides 15. But then, as we know, in the flexible development, it calls out that the sides are 10 and the rear is 10. It doesn't address the front. I had always gone with the understanding that means that the underlying 25 feet is in place. And if you look at all of the previous approvals in this subdivision, they have all met the 25-foot front setback. So it hadn't come up to my attention because, as you guys know, I had recused myself, wasn't involved in any deliberations on Weber. And as I brought up in the meeting, and I said that day, even if a mistake may have been made in the past, that doesn't override the zoning. And In fact, and I wonder here on this, this shows a porch. Then this would be up to the zoning enforcement officer, but my experience in Easton is that the zoning, the setback would be to the porch, not to the house itself. So I question that we can approve this because we don't have the right to waive zoning setbacks. Those are bylaws. But we have an attorney on the board and we have a director of planning. So if I'm wrong, by all means, please enlighten me.
So Greg, it's, the porch is part of the structure, for measuring setbacks.
And we don't have the right to,
Correct.
regardless of a mistake, you know.
Right.
And I don't know, I didn't go back and look at the Weber decisions and all that. It may have been a different decision, even though they're both flexible. But I don't see, you know, mistakes can be made, but knowingly, I don't think we can do this. Am I wrong?
The planning board doesn't have authority to waive, you know, parts of the bylaw that aren't waived in a zoning section itself. And as you pointed out, the flexible development talks about the side and rear setbacks. It does not talk about reducing the front setback.
But I would think, and I'd throw this out to the applicant, and I'd be okay with this. I can't speak for the board, but and I feel bad because we missed our last meeting with technical issues. Well, thank you for coming back tonight. But we could certainly do a conditional approval. We just need to slide the house back to meet our zoning, and that could just be submitted to Stephanie in her office. But I mean, I don't see any issue with that. Stephanie, do you?
Not at all. In fact, we just did it for the, I think it was lot 3. I'm getting so confused with the lots and the house numbers on these, but I think it was lot 6 and lot 4.
4 and 6.
4 and 6. And they did supply the revised plans and landscape plans. So yes, that you could certainly do that.
Is there a problem in the house, a few feet?
From a zoning standpoint, no.
No, I'm
That's
asking,
what I can speak to.
I'm asking the designer there, Easton.
I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
Is there a problem moving the house back to comply to zoning?
No, we can move the house back a few feet to make it comply with the conditional approval. There's no problem.
And board is I'm sure you all followed along with that riveting conversation. Any questions or comments? If not, we can try to get you all out of here quicker and consider a motion.
I'll move to conditional. Go ahead, Chris.
Make a motion to approve architectural lot 3 with the condition that the building be slid back to the yard of the porch dimension 5 feet or greater.
Second, Stetson.
Okay. My audio keeps going out. Stephanie, was that okay with the motion?
Yep, it was perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
We have a second, right? Or, I'm sorry, was there a second?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. I had to put my dog down the other day. It's been a very stressful week. All those in favor, all right, any further discussion? Vote. Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, Strange, aye.
Shane, aye.
Anderson.
Stetson, aye.
Cameron.
All right, that was everybody. Great, thank you. Good luck, Mr. Angstrom. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
We move on. Jump back. I don't know why the agenda keeps disappearing from my screen. Good speed of stage. Comprehensive permit. Blackledge. ZBA, request for comment.
Yep, Greg, I asked Suzanne to put that on the agenda. The board will, I hopefully remember that it was a few months ago now. I think it was October. The the board was asked for comments on the comprehensive permit for 89 and 91 Union Street, that proposed 108 unit, 2 buildings, 108 units in total residential rental property. At that time, the applicant had not submitted the engineered plans, and those were submitted just before the last meeting that we missed. So I wanted to make sure that the board was aware that those plans are out there. Suzanne can send them to everybody, direct you also to the ZBA public view of Permitize. And at the next meeting, if the board wants to discuss and provide comments, they would be welcome.
Has the unit count stayed the same?
Yes.
All right, so yeah, that's good, and especially because I know Deb was anxious to comment. So yeah, if I think if Suzanne could send them out, just
Yeah,
given the
and
holidays, it
remind
might be
everyone,
just a good
yep.
heads up, yeah.
Yep.
And then Deb's not with us. Okay. So okay, great. Sounds good. Anybody else? Any other before we move on to meeting minutes? Peter, this is usually where you shine.
Oh no, I looked at them quickly. I was trying to bring them back up here, and I looking for the email, but I looked at them and they look okay.
There are 2 sets.
I looked at one.
December 6th was the meeting that was canceled, and November 22nd.
We had minutes from December 6th.
It will be filed and uploaded to documents on it.
Basically says the meeting was canceled.
Motion to approve.
What if we don't approve the minutes?
For the 6th.
You're accepting them. It's not an approval anyway.
I refuse to participate in this miscarriage of justice. I'll be abstaining.
That's in second.
Thank you.
Oh, did I joke over, forgive me, so unprofessional. Robert's rules allow you to have 2 holiday mulligans, I've learned, so I've only used 1. All right, we have a second. All those in favor, strange eye.
Shane, aye.
That's enough.
All right, we have something here, planning director updates.
Wait, what about November 22nd?
Oh, I thought we did.
Motion to approve the minutes for November 22nd.
Second.
That's in second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor, strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Anderson, aye.
Stetson,
Thank
aye.
you.
Planning director updates?
I have none today. It was going to be the housing production plan update, but we.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't do a musical introduction. Yeah, so, chair's report, no, nothing to report, end of the year. Appreciate you guys all coming out. We did a lot of site meetings this year, and we did a lot of good work. Appreciate it. I hope you have great holidays. And I think, so if we could, as long as our next agenda is not too jammed, I'd like to put just an item in there for warrant articles that we may want for town meeting.
Yep.
Some obvious ones, and it's just some little ones that come up, so we can have a discussion of those. So if you guys have any thoughts on those, feel free to bring them to the next meeting. I wish everybody happy holidays, whenever you celebrate. Happy New Year. And who would like to take us out with Bing Crosby playing in the background?
Listen to John, Kevin.
Second.
You know, Joe, I thought your tech skills, you'd have fake snow falling by now in the background. But hey, so all right, all those in favor? Strange eye.
That's an aye.
Kevin,
Awesome. So, hey, Amos, real quick before we go, are you at the meeting that day? You said you're gone for 6 weeks. Is that starting like at our next meeting?
no, I canceled my flipping trip. I'm going until the end of the year coming back.
Okay. Well, Stefan, we'll have to get rid of that person. We're going to have to sit in. So, all right, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday season and Happy New Year. We'll see you back.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
Bye.